Okay, welcome to another episode of ChrisAmanda Chats. We are so excited to have you with us today. As obviously, I am with my amazing co-host, Amanda. Amanda, say hi.
Hi, co-host.
As you can tell, we are in different parts of the world today as we come to you. I am in San Diego, California. And Amanda, where are you at today? What luxury suite are you at?
Vegas.
Oh, you're in Vegas? What is that, a combination place? That sounds amazing. It looks nice.
You know, a bit of Vegas, bit of Brisbane.
Yeah.
Brisbane.
I don't know if Brisbane, Australia is ready for Vegas. I feel like it's too nice there. Don't let Las Vegas come in and ruin it. You know what I mean?
I was just joking.
I know. It's funny. I was funny story. When I was speaking at a high school, yesterday, and it was out here in Southern California, and I was talking about my own experience, with just places I've lived in the world and some of my, substance abuse issues. And I brought up Las Vegas, and I was like, oh man, I told him, I said, listen, I lived in Las Vegas. I said, don't ever make that mistake. Don't ever live in Las Vegas. It's a terrible place to live. I said, remember, Vegas has the 3-day rule. And they all started cracking up. I'm like, how do these 16-year-old kids know about the 3-day rule in Vegas, right? And then the teacher goes, guys, what did I tell you? And he had been in Vegas the weekend before for 3 days. And he came back, and on Monday, he told me, he says, listen, if you guys ever go to Vegas, only go for 3 days, right? So how funny is that I go to this random classroom and I tell the kids, don't go to Vegas, only go for 3 days. And they all start laughing because the teacher had just been in Vegas for 3 days. He goes, don't ever go to Vegas, only for 3 days. He says, it'll be too much. It's like that town is out of control.
I went
so
for
it's
3
not
days
just
as
me.
well. And
What's that?
I went for 3 days. I visited Vegas as well, and I went for 3 days, and I'm like, get me out of here. It's so loud. You can't sleep. There's so much yelling down the hallways, and
it's chaos.
Yeah,
that's it. What a great way to start the show, though. Welcome to another episode, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today: is chaos and substance abuse and mental health. And we've titled this episode emerging from COVID with your teenager, right? Like getting your teenager back after a COVID experience, after the last 2 years, and what their mental health is like. We're seeing it all across every angle now. We have teenage kids they're out of control. And the thing is that we expect them not to be out of control, but how can you expect them not to be out of control when for the last 2 years they've sat in their room and played video games, or they've sat in their room and gotten high behind closed doors, or they've sat there and watched pornography obsessively for 2 years, and then we expect them just to come back out of their room and be like regular teenagers again,
Yeah.
I was at that high school yesterday. Tonight I was at a youth group in a church, right? So I'm and then I was at a continuation high school the other day, and it's like all these kids all have their own ways of acting different, right? But the one thing, and I think this is what we can start off with tonight, Twitter, is how these kids are now used to isolation and not talking with people, and how do we get them to talk again, right? Because can we use Jay as an example?
Yes.
At first we thought Jay was kind of he's just in a bad mood, right? And for those of you that don't know, Jay is Amanda's 14-year-old son, and everything you ask him is a one-word answer, right? Doesn't matter. Are you hungry? No, not really. Do you want to go do something fun? Maybe later. I don't know. What do you feel like doing? Nothing really. Okay. Do you want everything is just I'm like, is he in a bad mood or something? But then right? It's it doesn't even matter what the question is. It's always one. And then I come back to the States, and I start talking to parents, and I'm like, man, this kid was you only giving one-word answers. They're like, oh, you mean and some, and this and that. And then even tonight, I had coffee with a friend, and I'm talking about this exact topic, and that we're going to do the show on this. And she's like, oh, that sounds exactly like my daughter, who's I think she's 10 now or 11. And it's and parents are bribing their kids with Hey, it used to be like, you want to do something, like go to the park, and like, no, that's kind of boring. And now parents are like, hey, whatever you want to do, we can do. Like, you want to go to Disneyland, you want to go whatever, and the kids are still like, no, I don't really like doing that anymore. That's not really fun. And the thing is it's because they're scared to go outside,
Yeah.
right? They haven't had any contact with people, and they've sat in their rooms for 2 years, and they forgot all their social skills. And if they were shy to begin with, which Jake kind of is, he's not super extroverted, right? He's kind of a quiet, well-mannered kid. And so like when you only hang out and talk to the computer, then you don't want to go back out and face that stuff. I think it is really based in fear. I mean, what do you think? What do you think about that?
Well, look, this is just like personal experience of just what's happened. Because last week Jay was here on school holidays, and
Right.
to be honest, until this moment came, I didn't really realize how many hours he was actually on the Xbox. But it came about because he was in trouble and the Xbox got taken away from him. And I am not here to say it is easy on parents or it's easy on the kids, because we're so used to just being like, oh, well, they're playing Xbox or he's playing Xbox and I'll just do my own thing. And so for me, like having that responsibility of, okay, what are we actually going to do today around like what on top of my work? It's like, what are we going to do today? Do you want to go and do this? Nah. You want to go and do that? Nah. And it's like everything that I suggested, everything that I came up with, no, that's boring. Okay, well, how about you come up with something that you want to do? Couldn't think of anything. They told me it was easy. I'm like, well, I'm still waiting on the list. Where is it? Like, what do you want to do? So like, it's hard on both ends. Like not only as a parent trying to get them off the Xbox or get them off video games, it's like the child doesn't want to do anything. So how do you like come to a middle ground? I don't know. We were struggling last week. Like it was not an easy week for me, as you know. Like I was struggling. I was like, I'm actually done. I don't know what else to do. And I'm sure many parents probably feel like that.
Yeah. And that's why, I want to bring this in. And for those of you that are new to the show as well, I am a clinical counselor, and I worked with high schools and I developed leadership programs, and that's how and I work with faith-based youth groups, and I work with continuation high school kids. So I see kids from every realm, every demographic, every neighborhood. And, what's interesting to see is the emergence of video games as a way of life. This is stuff that parents never had to deal with. And I don't think parents fully grasp the concept of how video games work in a child's mind, right? And so I wanted to share just a quick little bit about what that looks like for parents, because we literally, when we're bringing kids, especially when we're bringing these kids out of these young adults out of the COVID era where they have been sitting, I mean, think if you sat in a room for 5 hours a day for literally 2 years in a row and did the same repetitive habit, like you're not going to be able to just, well, and especially when, and this isn't just to knock on video games, right? Because video games are part of life now, right? Like there's Xbox, I mean, whatever it is, there was the Wii, there is all these interactive video games. I mean, so families literally use the TV and video games as like family fun night now, right? That's like, so video games are part of our life. So once again, we're not going to like put video games as like the culprit of like all your kids' problems. And if you take that away, then they'll turn into regular upstanding kids, because that's not what it is, right? What we need to look at is what video games do to a teenager's brain. And that is they trigger massive amounts of dopamine that affect the children negatively in a chemical sense, right? And it imbalances their chemical makeup and increases this dopamine. So literally it would be like, if your 13-year-old kid went to the gym for 5 hours a day, what are his muscles going to be like by the time he's 16, right? He's going to have a pulled shoulder, right? He's going to, like, you know what I mean? He's going to lift too hard and he's going to tear muscles. And by the time he's 17 or 18, he might not even be able to play athletics anymore, because he's literally tore his body apart from doing something that he wasn't prepared to do at an early age. And this is the same thing that video games do on that type of prolonged exposure and on those many hours a day to the mental capacity of your brain, right? Yeah. It doesn't help them at all. And then, it's like I was doing some research earlier, and did you know that like literally almost 70% of all, I couldn't find anything in Australia, but for American kids at least, 70% of most kids or most high schools, 70% consider all their students to be ADD or ADHD now. That's ridiculous,
Yeah, of course.
right? Like,
Thanks.
and then what happens then what happens then, right? Then they want to give them medication. Like you're going to put 70% of your high school kids on Ritalin or something like that, which is like a methamphetamine type drug, and then to calm them down when they don't really have ADD. What they have is lack of outside
Attention.
activities, right? Yeah, they have
Yeah,
lack of
because
attention, they have lack of responsibility, they have lack of outdoor activities, and they have lack of, you know, a good role model in their life. And so, because I'll tell you right now, if you don't talk to your kids about sex, YouTube will. If you don't talk to your kids about how long they are on video games, then Call of Duty will, or Grand Theft Auto. Like these are the things that are teaching kids how to be an adult. Pornography, right? Because parents don't want to talk about sex. So the kids at 12, 13 years old are already watching porn for like an hour a day. I mean, what does that do to their future relationships? What does that do to their brain? Like they can't comprehend what they're actually seeing. And it's so that's where we're seeing all these problems coming out. So
well,
that's what we want to address today, right? Is like how can we healthfully, or not just helpfully, but in a healthy way, bring the kids back to some form of semblance and still maintain a sense of autonomy or sense of responsibility, and also with parents and their busy schedules not having to quit everything that they do to be a full-time teacher to their kids, right? Because
yeah.
that's the thing, man. You really have to, it's a balance.
Yeah, and I think there's like, a few things that kind of did happen. With sport, it was everything was shut down. So kids that were playing sport are now not playing sport because they're so like only things are opening up now. So to get back into that after not doing anything, it's like when you stop the gym and then you go back after a year and you're like, it hurts. I don't want to do
Yeah.
this. It's a lot of effort. It's fine while they're in that right mind frame and they're like doing it every day. As soon as they've had a break for a year and they come back and everything's tough. It's the same thing. But what we kind of did last week was implement like 2 hours of screen time in each moment. But then it wasn't going from like screen time from the Xbox, then jumping on the phone because you're off the Xbox. So that naturally that would mean that you could jump on the phone. It's really, and it's like, especially when you have teenagers, you're like arguing with them as to why you can't, like why they shouldn't do this. But then they seem to want to know it all and think they know it all. So it's like you're ending up in an argument, and that's creating this also like the just bang bang, you're like going up against an adult trying to parent them as well. So like, not to take that away, because this is where I think parents, in the end, you just give up because you're like, well, I don't know how to talk to this child anymore. I don't know what to do. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, we're all in this together because it's so new. Like, all this is coming out. It's never happened before. So we're navigating our way through, but sometimes we get lost in the actual what's actually going on because we're so busy doing other things like our work and just the normal everyday things, especially if you've got a few children. Like, I know for myself, I've got a 4-year-old as well. So it's like trying to do one thing with one and another with it gets busy, and then it's easier just to let them do what they want to do. So finding a middle ground, like, I don't know, I always believe outside time or anything to do with sport is a good way of burning some energy that's not in a healthy way, like, but how do you get them outside is another thing. And maybe it's like, go with your mates and play soccer, like you've got, and just make it happen. It has to come from a parent to enforce what you have said, right? Like, it's good enough to say, oh, you can only have 2 hours, but then if you're not going to follow that up after 2 hours, they're going to just
then they
stay
don't
there.
follow. Yeah, they don't follow. Like you have to be there to enforce what you decide, right?
Yeah.
I think three points that I want to make right off with the bat with this particular conversation, and then what you brought up, but from a clinical perspective, like, because I hear your frustrations, and I've been with you in some of those frustrations, right? And in the moment, and one of the things that I think is really helpful for parents to realize is that whatever age your child is now, they are 2 years behind emotionally, regardless. Even if your child has been playing sports, or even if your child has been like doing their homework and not causing any problems, emotionally they are still 2 years behind. Socially, they are 2 years behind because they did not have 2 years to interact with their peers in a face-to-face environment and learn about life, or they didn't get out to experience life, right? So, like for instance, Jay being 14, he's actually still at a 12-year-old emotional level. And that's, I think, part of the challenge for parents is that they're like, oh, well, now my kid's 17. He should know this, right? Rule number one, never assume other people know what you know. Just because he's 17 in age, remember, for 2 years, he didn't go out and experience life. He didn't go out and have face-to-face talks with his mates, with his friends, whatever. And so he's still at a 15-year-old level. So when he acts like a 15-year-old, or if he's 15 and he still acts like a 13-year-old, or if he's 13, he still acts like an 11-year-old, it's because that's where he's at emotionally, right? And that's really where we have to come up, and that's all the work that we do, right? In our coaching and with families and with youth and with parents even, is we help people with their emotional distress. Like that's it. Like we help you process emotions, attach, unattach from negative emotions, things like that. And really that's what we look at. That's the first thing that I want to bring up today, is that when you were talking with your teenager or your child and they're giving you a hard time, you have to remember, you have to go back and talk to them like they're 2 years younger, right? Not in a condescending way, but just as an emotional, that's where they're still at, The second thing that you brought up is parents really have to set a good example when they come up with something, right? And this is hard for a lot of us, right? Because if we're going to sit there and say, hey, you get an hour of phone time, and then I need you to go outside and play, or I need you to do this, or I do that, and the whole time you're like, hey, listen, I told you, you get 1 hour time, and then you do that. Hold on a second. Okay. Yeah. So listen, like what I was telling you, you get 1 hour screen time, and then you need to go out and find something to do outside. Okay. Oh, what? Oh, okay. Unbelievable. Hey, okay. Hold on a second. Blah, blah, you know what I mean? And so it's like, if you're going to be on your phone, you can't tell your kid not to be on the phone, right? So and that's tough, because a lot of the times, phone is work. Phone is responsibility for a parent in order to keep the home in one piece, right? And the kid's like, well, how come you're always on your phone? You're like, well, because I'm paying for rent. But that's not, you can't say that to a kid, right? Because then he's going to think you're a hypocrite, right? And that doesn't build the trust that you want to build. And so I really like the idea that we had kind of talked about before, and we looked at this before with like Jackson, right? Your younger son, is that, you know what? Like, put the phone down and say, hey, what are your friends doing right now? Let's call them up, right? Like, be the parent to grab your son and his friend, his mate, and his whatever, and take them to ice cream, right? It's like, okay, we know we're going to ice cream. It's not a cure-all, but at the same time, you're getting them out of the house, and they're not on their phones, hopefully. Or you tell me, like, you're not going to be on your phones, but we'll go to ice cream, or we'll go out to, a hamburger, or we'll go play football, or you know what I mean, or take them, to the trampoline park, dude. So it's like, this gets you out of the house as a parent and gets you to spend quality time, but it also gets them back out. Because really what we need to do, all of us, and whether or not you have kids or not and you're watching this, is you need to reintroduce your teenager or your child into the world right now, because they have not been out there face to face with people. They're scared. They don't know what's going on. I mean, if you were 12 and they were like, the pandemic killed millions of people, like, you don't want to go outside. Like, why would I do that? I'd rather stay inside where it's safe and I can watch TV or I can play video games. Like, I don't want to. What if I go out there and I catch that thing that people are talking about? You know what I mean? You have to remember, it's a legitimate fear, because they're children, right? And it's like, if all they've seen on TV and in the news and on their computers is this killed all these people and this killed all these people and this killed all these people, like, I'm not leaving the house. Why would I? There's nothing out there for me, Mom. You go buy the groceries. Yeah, I don't have to go to work, Mom. You go to work, right? Like, I don't want to go to school. I'm fine on the computer. I like school computer. I don't want to, I don't like those people that make fun of me. I don't want to go back. And so it's like, we have to take these kids and reintroduce them into the world and be like, hey, we're going to go get ice cream. Hey, we're going to go to the park. We're going to go to the beach, and you're going to go, and we're going to spend an hour outside, and we're going to get you reacclimated to the real world. So you're not scared of it. Right. And
Yeah.
it's going to take extra effort from your parents.
Yeah. Which I guess then comes into
family outings, right? Family outings are a great idea.
Yeah. Which comes into like being present, right? So if we're where you were talking before, like if we're on our phone as parents and that's what they're seeing, well, that is, you know, maybe we can use this as reintroducing play and fun into our own lives, because as much as the kids have been sitting or been locked up, you know, there's a lot of parents and people that have done the same. So reintroducing play and fun, like how many people actually really play in the week or on the weekends? Like most people would sit at home and either watch their iPad or watch the TV or watch a series and not experience play and it doesn't even have to be from a sense of like financial. You know, when we were together, we went and sat in the park, literally under trees, didn't we? And did a meditation. Yeah. And that doesn't even have to
be great time.
But go and have a picnic or go and like
There's music.
Yeah, take yourselves outside. It really doesn't have to cost anything. You know, like if people are struggling with, well, if I invite a friend, then I have to pay for the friend's, you know, like meal or whatever is the case. Like, and sometimes that can be scary. And, you know, like for the parent, you're like, oh, I actually can't afford this. But you're trying to do it, you know, like there's that, and maybe it's just going to the park. Maybe it's just appreciating the trees. And if you can go to the beach and just be by the water, like kids love just to throw rocks in the pond. And, you know, these things that we used to do as kids, we've all forgotten because video games are so prevalent and it's so easy. So, you know, it's like coming up with those, going back into your like inner child and just being like, what did I do when I was a kid? Because we all figured it out. You know, we didn't have parents there all the time. Like I know my parents were working the whole time. I had to figure it out. We didn't have TV. We didn't have anything. We had to go outside and play. Like I remember swinging around on the clothesline, like just, you know, like running, jumping on the clothesline. Like kids wouldn't even know what that is today because one, we hardly anyone has clotheslines these days, like those round ones. You know?
Yeah, they're called clothes dryers. They take like half the time, babe. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier for everybody.
Right? So this is what I mean. It's like reintroducing play for ourselves, which will then encourage our kids to do the same.
Well, and I think, you know, the big point that we're trying to make here for parents is that even a little bit will help, right? So like if you don't have to take 5 kids out for all the pizza they can eat, right? But like, you know, an ice cream cone is like $2, right? Like universally, I travel all over, and an ice cream cone still is $2 to $3 around there. You know, it depends where you go.
Maybe not in Brisbane, but anyway.
I'm just saying.
Like $7 per cone.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, maybe you should get your facts straight. I'm not kidding.
Okay. The point I'm making is that you don't have to spend $80 on pizza. You can spend $5 then, whatever it is, on ice cream cones, right? I guess it depends like where you go for your ice cream too, right? I mean, obviously you can go to like the gelato shop and pay $7, or you can take them to McDonald's where it's like $1.25. You know what I mean? They got McDonald's everywhere. McDonald's don't cost $7 for a cone. I can promise you that. But regardless, right? And you don't even have to use ice cream, right? Because now half the kids are dairy, lactose intolerant, even though they're not. But we probably just made them that way because we didn't give them ice cream to begin with. That's the problem.